I'm in control.
When most guys think of awesome physiques, they think of biceps, they think of their chest, they think of abs. One very underappreciated thing that most guys don't think of training.
Glutes.
Exactly, yeah, get to it, right?
Glutes.
It's so important, right? Just from a function standpoint, as well as a visual standpoint, it balances everything out.
Strong athletes have strong glutes. And I think aesthetically looking at that physique when they have good, strong gluteus maximus is something that we all strive for. We want to have that strong foundation, right? We do so much sitting in our life. As the functionality begins to diminish, other areas of our body are going to begin to take over. So from a joint by joint approach, I find it common that when someone starts having their glutes begin to atrophy and stop functioning the way they need to function, we could feel things happening in the knees, the lower back, who knows? It's not a good thing to start going through.
Exactly, you can't really get strong period in the gym without strong glutes. That's why the 5 moves we have for you are gonna help you strengthen your glutes, but you're gonna find that they hit other muscle groups too. Your hamstrings are gonna work, your lower back is gonna work, because your glutes are a muscle group that needs to be hit with weight and needs to be challenged, so let's get to it. So number 5 on our list, and the only exercise that kind of classifies as an isolation type exercise for our glutes, is the hip thrust. And this is something, you're seeing more machines that do it now, right?
Right, and if you don't have access to a machine, you can throw a barbell across your waist, but I know Life Fitness and Hammer Strength came out with a great glute drive. There's other companies right now that are starting to produce these plate-loaded glute machines. And listen, I love doing them, not only to isolate the glutes, but to get those hips firing, so when we go into our compound exercises, our bodies just feel more loose.
Exactly, I think the key function of our glutes, and the thing that we're gonna hit on all of our exercises, is they drive our hips into extension. They drive us nice and straight into this position. And what happens for a lot of people is we wind up a little bit short of that because our hip flexors wind up tight from all the sitting we're doing, and our glutes just aren't super strong. So this is a great exercise, I think, to work on that maxed out hip extension, because the most challenging point on any hip thrust, whether you're doing it with the barbell or whether you're doing it with one of these machines, is gonna be that point where you're at maximum hip extension. So you get to train maximum hip extension. And that, I think, is the strength of all of these machines. The fact that they're making these machines tells you something.
Tells you that's moving in that direction. And yeah, like Eb said, having shortened hips, a lot of you out there who are always going around feeling like runners, feeling like you got to stretch your hips, start strengthening the glutes, reciprocal inhibition. You'll start finding that those hip flexors loosen up as this gets stronger.
Exactly. Key points of performance as you're doing this, and the key things Don thinks about when he's doing his reps, getting a nice stretch at the bottom, but then just driving all the way up and really actively, I think it goes beyond.
Squeezing, yeah, you want to really, I never like putting myself into low back extension, but I like getting to that neutral spine, but while I'm in extension, squeezing my glutes as hard as I can and trying to contract my glutes as if I was trying to contract my bicep during a bicep curl.
Exactly, but simultaneously keeping your abs nice and tight so that you don't go into that arch position. So it really winds up being, I mean, it's a glute isolation exercise, but like so many other exercises, you wind up with so many other benefits too.
100%. All right, movement number 4 is an RDL. RDL stands for Romanian deadlift. It can be performed with a barbell.
Was it actually invented in Romania?
I don't know, man. I'm assuming we're assuming it was invented in Romania, but you don't know. You know, sometimes it's people just make up names.
Either way, really good exercise.
It's a phenomenal exercise. And it can be performed with a barbell, it can be performed with dumbbells, it can be performed with kettlebells. Just some form of resistance in front of you. It can be performed with bands, right? So a Romanian deadlift is a hinge. We're gonna be really focusing on those glutes and those hamstrings. But what I also like about the Romanian deadlift is that we're getting so much recruitment from retracting our shoulder blades and getting our lats to fire and our cores working. So for me, it really has been one of those go-to hip hinging movements for, in my training. And if someone's able to stay in proper positioning while doing this exercise, it's something that I just like to go heavy and hard on.
Exactly, and the same idea as the hip thrust, in that we're kind of driving our butt back and down, and then as you drive up, we wind up in that position of hip extension. But what we've changed is the most challenging point in the move, right? When we're on any kind of hip thrust style motion, that point where we're in maximum hip extension is the toughest point of the exercise.
Right.
When we're doing the RDL, it's a little bit more eccentric focus, which I love, developing the strength there.
100%, but as we're going into that eccentric portion of the movement, I do like focusing on pretty quick concentric, right? Working on some power. So we're working on that eccentric, we're working on that concentric. It is hamstrings, it is glutes, it is lats, it is grip, it is a hip dominant movement. So I don't want to see a lot of knees in this, but we are really, truly focusing on the posterior chain there.
Exactly, lights up your glutes, lights up your hamstrings. So make sure to hit that one. And as we're starting to get into these exercises, now we're starting to get into heavier exercises because again, you've got to load up, your glutes are strong.
This is why I love going heavy on these. Guys, start slow, have fun, enjoy.
Third up for us is going to be something very similar to the RDL. We're going to go to a kickstand Romanian deadlift. And all we're doing here now is instead of having our feet square as we're doing that Romanian deadlift, we're going to take a staggered stance. So we're getting a little bit more athletic with this. Now, as we lower into that Romanian deadlift, most of the weight and challenge winds up on that front leg. And so when we stand up from that, one, we stand up in an athletic stance, we're still getting that good hip extension. But again, we've loaded one side a little bit differently than the other. I think it's really important to have unilateral exercises in your routine.
I really don't design any type of training, upper or lower, without some form of unilateral work. Now, the kickstand RDL came about because the one-legged RDL, it's a difficult movement. So when you're holding a weight contralaterally or ipsilaterally and you're loading into that position, there's a lot of variables going on here. There's balance, there's load. Like as you go heavier, it's gonna be difficult to balance. There's fatigue. Fatigue's gonna force you to lose your balance. And I think at times it can get a little sloppy and a little dangerous. So what I love about that kickstand position is that we're really putting about 90% of our weight on that grounded leg. And my back leg right now is really gonna get into that kickstand position where I don't even have 10% of my weight on that leg. And I'm gonna try and keep that knee and tibia vertical, and I'm gonna try and keep this a hip dominant movement. Now we're working on balance and stability, we're working on it safely.
What happens when we wind up having to deal with all those balance challenges and stability challenges that come with the single leg deadlift is we can't load, right? And in order to really grow our glutes, we want to be able to load. And that's what I love about the kickstand RDL is we get to find that unilateral position, but still go heavy. You can really push the load on this. You can get fairly close to what you might be able to do with the traditional RDL. So I think I love that.
And let's talk about feel here. I mean, I feel this movement. And I never, determine the success of a workout through soreness, but I can just feel locked into this exercise. I feel like I'm developing that balance and athleticism. But as you said earlier, I'm able to go heavy. All right, guys, number 2 in our glute training, one of my all-time favorite exercises is the squat. Now, squats can be performed 20 different ways, 100 different ways. There's so many variations of the squat, but taking a traditional movement like a barbell back squat, that could be a knee dominant movement depending on your ankle mobility and your hip mobility and how you're squatted, or it could become a very hip dominant movement. So I think this all comes down to how an individual's moving. But what I like to do when trying to make it a little bit more of a glute focused squat is squatting to a box where we're keeping that vertical knee tibia. We're really trying to sit back onto that box. We're trying to pull slowly onto that box by using the strength in our hamstrings and glutes. And you're gonna feel so much more recruitment. Also, for those people who may have not injured knees, but wonky knees, maybe a little bit of arthritis or things are going on, this is a very safe way of being able to squat because it's not allowing any knee dominance.
So I think what you said that's so important is the idea of the vertical tibia, of keeping our shin perpendicular to the ground. Because as long as we fight the urge to drive our knees forward, we keep a lot of the emphasis on our glutes. And that's what you're saying to do with this wide stance box squat.
It's that one exercise that can just look so different on so many people. You can go and look at someone squatting and their torso could be vertical, or their torso could be hinged so much further forward where they have to squat in a more hip dominant position. And there's so many factors. There's ankle mobility, there's hip mobility, there's thoracic mobility. Yes, we can improve mobility. Yes, we can work on things, but at a certain point, like the body's just not gonna move any differently, right?
Exactly, and that's what you, like you said, you control for as many factors as you can, and you introduce the box. Suddenly you can focus a little bit more on keeping that shin perpendicular to the ground. Again, look at how we're patterning our exercises. We're able to load this aggressively. This back squat is going to be one of the heaviest exercises you do in the gym, period.
Yeah, 100%, and if you don't feel ready to throw a bar in your back, and to be honest with you, most people I work with aren't, I will go to a specific, we call them lateralizations. It's just a variation. Grabbing a kettlebell in your hand, holding a dumbbell in a goblet position, maybe a double kettlebell. You can get onto the box, you can get into that vertical knee tibia where you're much more hip dominant, recruiting those glutes a lot better and more safely.
The reason we're choosing a wide stance squat is because there's glute benefit there too. It winds up being our glutes that help us keep our knees wide as we lower down.
Right, it's almost like a sumo wrestler. When you're seeing them sit wide and they're sitting into that position, that is basically what we're looking for right now. We want that movement to start with our glutes sitting back, not our knees moving forward. That is what we mean by glute dominance opposed to knee dominance.
Exactly. Number 2, that wide stance box squat. And top's on our list, and an exercise that gets so many benefits. We've got glute power, we're gonna build glute size, and we're gonna get a lot more total body benefit from this.
Speed, hypertrophy, endurance. I mean, there's so much, right? I love it.
Exactly, the kettlebell swing. And I think what I love about this is it is a powerful movement, but we're focusing on that hinge, we're perfecting that hinge, and we really get to own that position of maximum hip extension at the top, and then we go right into another rep. An exercise we can load up a lot of weight on too.
You can load up a lot of weight, and it's one of those exercises where you are developing that cardiovascular component on doing kettlebell swings. They are hard. I can structure interval training around it. It's almost like your muscle building form of cardio. If there is such a thing, this would be the closest thing to that.
The reason it has so many of those benefits is because it has to be powerful. So there's only one way to swing a kettlebell, and that is fast. There's no tempo on this. It's literally hike the belt back, make sure your butt goes back with it, and then stand up, squeeze the heck out of your glutes and drive the bell forward. And it all has to happen as explosively as possible, or else the bell simply doesn't move.
Right, those are called hard style kettlebell swings, and that's something that Eb and I really believe in. We want to be able to perform, but we also want to look a certain way. It is important that our body moves a certain way. And I like to compare this, the hard style kettlebell, it's like sprinting opposed to marathon running. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with marathon running, but look at the difference in body types, right? And you look at a sprinter's body, holding a little bit more muscle, you know, a little bit more jack, muscle bellies are a little bit more rounded, and marathon runners just look a bit differently. So I think it's also, we want the body to move fast, we want it to have a level of resiliency, we don't want to break it down with a long, slow tempo, and that's why we've chose this one.
So I try to actually think about squeezing my glutes as I stand up, because I think that's the forgotten thing, right?
Right.
You're not just swinging the bell, you're actively squeezing your glutes and standing fast. And that winds up having a ton of carryover, like you said, to athletics. The reason it's number 1 for us is because you get that brilliant combination of, 1, you can pick up a really heavy kettlebell and attack this. Don't be afraid to load this exercise up and only do 6 reps, that's fine. And 2, it's also super versatile. Like you said, we can use it as a cardio move, we can use it on the back end of a leg workout, we can use it in our speed training, you can use it so many different ways, and you almost always have access to something you can swing, because it doesn't need to just be a kettlebell. Kettlebell is the best way to do it, but you can swing a dumbbell too.
Love it. Guys, the kettlebell swing, this is why it is our favorite.